And we're live, right. I am joined today by the lovely Soulbunni, who was going to appear the other day, but for circumstances out of our control, couldn't quite happen. But thankfully, I'm able to chat with Soulbunni today. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Nice Tuesday day. Just currently working on a video, so you caught me at a good time when I was taking a break.
Awesome.
As far as like this period, like this is the day, like my break day. So yeah,
Yeah.
you have me my undivided attention.
And obviously, it's a few hours of time between us. It's very much the evening in the UK, not quite that in America. How's it been today? How have you been?
Good, good, good. I'm in high spirits.
Excellent.
I've came back to YouTube recently. So in the past, I would say like my last video is like 3.5 weeks old now, but like that's like my serious video coming back to YouTube after being gone for like more than several months. And even before that, like that was like my last like actual video I like put effort into was in February. So to go from February to like August is not no upload, and now coming back strong and like it feels nice. So it's that break has allowed me to like be open to have these type of like conversations because I spent most of that time just thinking about my own worldviews and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious what questions you're gonna ask because I have no idea, and I'm all for it. Like throw softball. Don't throw all softballs my way. Like I can handle
Yeah,
a
yeah.
hardball. I'm open to anything. I trust uh, your intentions. Okay, cool.
Well, no, it's essentially, it's the election, obviously, such a massive event, sociopolitically, just in terms of the history of our nations, US, UK, the whole world, basically. You've got this huge event, right? The fascist Republican movement, right wing, intensely capitalist, intensely nationalist. It's got all this hatred towards so many different marginalized groups, be it in America or beyond, and it's a week away from winning an election and potentially realizing this vision. And so, one of the immediate questions, I suppose, is just about how you're feeling about it, right? Like, how does it feel to be in a country that's on the precipice of this huge event, I suppose?
Ooh, this is probably my first public like discussion on this, like genuinely, but like it has been, especially being like with my multiple marginalizations of being like a black woman and being a black trans woman, um, and also being half Mexican. So like there's other like nuanced things that impacts me being half Mexican, like immigration, having family that have legal immigration, that people like Republicans when Trump was in office hammered, tackled on legal immigration and was like minimizing it, and make forcing people have that were legally here, forcing them out. So yeah, there's it's a very nuanced thing. I kind of want to feel like it's exhausting. It's so scary. It's scary and exhausting at the same time. It's like in this one breath, like all these things I'm afraid of, like either outcome, like we're not also because like I'm not a huge Kamala Harris fan, but I also understand the need to protest her over Trump because I know how the world, not just America. America's one thing, and that's a lot of things that like I'm on like the reason why I prefer Kamala to be in office, but it's like the whole aspect of or not like where and then when I say that I mean in the sense like I'm not risking my vote to get protesting my vote because I already saw what happened in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, like all that. There's one term and we lost like Roe v. Wade. We lost affirmative action just from one term. So just imagining the second term and what that would bring, like that scares me. So it's like I'm nuanced. Like I see both sides. I understand. Like, that's what made it pretty exhausting because people are at their throats. People are at their throats. People are at each other's throats, and like I feel like we need to have a little bit more like some folks and on both sides need to have in the sense of like when it comes to people that are either voting for Kamala and who are either protesting her. I feel like people need to just like I miss it when people be able to agree to disagree
Yeah.
peacefully and not like have to throw a bunch of buzzwords at people or calling people the worst demons in the world. Like it's just been kind of draining, and that's what kind of makes like I'm ready for this to be over. And like I'm noticing a lot, especially Black women, a lot of us are saying we're ready for this election to be over because of just kind of like again on both sides. And I'm not painting one side anything. I just want to say both sides. On both sides, it's like there's like a lot of like, and they might be the minority of things, but there's a lot of loud attacks on just on both sides of people's just like opinions. People just like coming at each other's throats, and I wish we didn't have like I don't know. I feel to a degree, I'm noticing some people are going harder on other leftists than they would ever on a Republican, and that's the other thing that's kind of draining, and that's kind of why like a lot of us are like want to just be done with this election.
Yeah,
We just want to know that we want to know the bad news or just tell us already so we can like prepare. Like that's where a lot of us are at. So
exactly, right?
it's
Like,
probably the most draining election I would say a lot of especially Black women have been and as of recently in the recent like 8 years. Like this is the one that's like, oh, I might just vote privately and not tell people or anything. Like it's gotten to that point.
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's a very as you say, there's so much vitriol just like in the air and the atmosphere around this election. There's so much negative energy. Firstly, just from the fact that there's open fascists running as a party, right? There's people who just actively want the end of democracy, dictatorship, oppression directly in the law of all these different forms. But then, as you say, there's this because of that, because that's just sort of there openly. There's this expectation that everyone else in society will just deal with that and go about their day-to-day lives like normal and just conduct the election as though this isn't like an ominous society level threat. And so, as you say, left-wing people, and especially people who are often in these marginalized communities, like I'm obviously Black, I'm not, I'm cisgender, but equally, you know, there's still that everyone in society's got different intersections that they're going to be in some way under threat from, right? Like we're all going to be potentially scrutinized under a rising fascist world. Some of us obviously more because of the various intersections that get targeted. But there's that I find with this sort of conversation a lot of the time, the mental strain that must be put on people and that are in the crosshairs of these movements is often ignored, right? Like there's a lack of consideration actually of just the mental toll it takes actually living in a world that is going to be, you know, in this situation of potentially a fascist takeover.
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, everyone's scared. Everyone's scared. Like a lot of people are operating on both sides and validly. There's a lot of emotions because it's like there's a lot of unknown. There's so much that that's weighing on this election of all elections. This one is there's just like a lot to lose on all sides. Everyone lose something. No one comes out a winner generally in this election. Like there's so much work to be done no matter who wins. But in that sense, obviously I prefer Kamala, obviously, but like that's why I feel like because of like there isn't like we don't have a Bernie Sanders right now. We don't have a Bernie Sanders. So that's another thing. You know what I mean when I say like I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is the best person to run for president at all, but it's like we don't have that type of like excitement. It's a lot of it's a doom and gloom no matter way. Like we know like whoever wins, we have work to put in. Like we just want to know who we're gonna work with. And some people are being more strategic about who they want to work with, and some people want to be strategic with how withholding their vote, rightfully so, and whatnot. But it's wild. I'd say like I mean, my biggest concern is like I think to like how Trump when he won, how badly that impacted Britain. Y'all became morally out not just Britain but Europe as a whole. They became more like outwardly right wing. I remember in France, there's this group called I think Identitarian Next Gen or something along the lines of that. Some French
Yeah,
college group back around then, like a lot of people were like getting weight, not just in America, but like globally, we're getting emboldened, especially in Europe. So just a lot of things were just like, you know, popping off, and it kind of launched a lot of people's careers at that same time. So I could imagine a second Trump term we would get a second wave of that. We would get a second wave of that. And I don't want that. Like, I'm literally working on a series right now about the alt-right pipeline, like that whole like YouTube, online, Gamergate, all that. Right now, we're dealing with people that are talking about anti-DEI in video games. Let a black person, like, that's what I mean. They want a second. They want a second anti-SJW wave. They want a second Gamergate. They're trying for a lot, and Trump getting a second term would boldly bring that in and just would like, oh no, I don't. It's just, it's a lot and it's scary. And I just want this to be done with. It. Today's Tuesday. Elections are always on a Tuesday, so it's exactly a week from now.
Yeah.
I I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot. It's a lot. This is like, I mean, I felt like there's more excitement in 2020 in the midst of COVID an election than this one. That's kind of like what I'm noticing. Just like this is probably yeah, genuinely probably the scariest election that we've had as of late.
Yeah, and I mean, I can testify to what you're saying about the far right in Europe. Like, identitarians is a nice little label for themselves, because obviously calling yourself fascist and Nazis doesn't quite have the same stick in society. But in Britain, we've got loads of far right groups popping up. Tommy Robinson has been, I mean, he was arrested actually recently, but his far right process was quite scary in the summer, and obviously there was one in London not long ago. Nigel Farage he's an MP now. He's actually in Parliament as a sitting member of our government now, and so it's just a lot to constantly live with. Knowing there's people who actively want your existence out of society, don't care for any of the social and civil rights that we have in our society, and so I can only imagine, based on that, how stressful and unpleasant it must be actually having this big society potentially changing event right on the precipice of happening, right? Like, the election's going to happen in a week's time, and there's a 50-50 chance that the people who win it are going to be very dangerous, and that is just a lot to think about and live with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's even the fear of just there being a tie because the House is controlled by Republicans, so they would immediately choose Trump. So even if there was a tie, that's what I mean. It's just a lot of a mystery of the unknown, and it really is a flip up here. But maybe not. They just, I'm not sure if you saw Trump, some comedian talk about Puerto Ricans, the way
Yeah.
they talk about Puerto Rico. Maybe not. We might have just got what they call, I think in America, the October surprise. It's usually like when something happens that makes their poll numbers go up, and that went down from Trump, which means they went up for Kamala. So I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm still nervous. That's why I'm partying it up on Halloween. That's just what I've been like. Just I'm not here, but I got to do this. I promise to do this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's that. I mean, I saw the aftermath of his Nazi rally, basically, that he had in New York, where he saw all the worst people around his campaign. I mean, I found it quite interesting that essentially every like disgraced comedian, entertainer, politician was basically there at his event. But no, just the sheer audacity to come out and say those things, knowing how many people in America, especially America too, because it's in Europe, a lot of whilst obviously it's a diverse place, and there's lots of different people, America is arguably the most diverse nation in terms of just how many people have come from different places to go there to actually think about. And so when you've got all this, this stuff happening, active racism, active xenophobia, just openly hateful, contemptuous people, like it makes your hair stand up end. It makes you think, wow, this is terrifying, but also can be good as a unifying thing to go against that. Like, say, actually, we're not going to stand for your Nazi fascist BS. We're going to, vote against you, be out against you in the streets, campaign against you, be a presence in society that says, actually, we're black and we're queer, and we're not going to go just because you've got a vision of society that's come out of the KKK's playbook, right? Like, there's a unifying anger I find sometimes that can be useful in moments like this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like is that kind of how it is in Britain right now? You feel like there's some despite like all the extremities, there's a lot of unification going on with y'all.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like we, when so in the summer we had these far right protests, right? Protests, riots. They believed like a scare story about an assault that allegedly an immigrant had done, and used that as an excuse to go and burn buildings and attack mosques and beat up black people and stuff, right? But then in response to that, you got all these counter protests where like thousands of people came out and basically protested the far right, right? And like said quite clearly in lots and lots of different cities, you will not come and smash up society. We're here. You're going to have to go. You're going to have to stop. And things like that, if they're sustained and continued, can be really effective and really useful to think about, right? Like, I think that it's so important to always remember that for as loud as fascists are, there's not as many of them as there are of us. Like, it's not a popular thing, right? I mean, you look at Trump's Project 2025. Like, the reason we don't talk about it
Yeah.
too much is because it sucks. It's like no one wants that outside of like ultra right wing conservative land.
Yeah, I don't even think like your average conservative is like, oh, like that's what I mean. It's wild. But uh, it's it almost feels like we're back in like this is the 2016 moment right now. Like where it was in 2016, like how much weighed on that election, whether you liked Hillary or not. A lot was gonna happen
Yeah.
either way, you know. So it's in that it's almost equivalent to that. The only difference is that Kamala Harris is more likable than Hillary Clinton, for obvious reasons, especially because what's it called? Hillary Clinton came up with so much blood on her hand running for that election. Who's dripping blood on her hand, like running. That's why a lot of people called her a war hawk, whatnot. Like that was a lot of the very targeted like language they used for Hillary Clinton was war hawk. That was one of the a large amount, where it's because of her position that she was in. So yeah, it's it's equally I would feel like, it would influence society positively or negatively, and a mixture of both. Um, Either way, like, it's just kinda like, we don't like I said, we don't have a Bernie Sanders that's coming up to save us as people felt in 2016 at the time, like, that people felt like they can trust their vote in. Like, I feel like, um that's the big difference is like there's just we don't have as much as we did back then because also Joe Biden took forever to drop out, which put us in the situation where there wasn't really much time for anyone else to run. And it's also made it more difficult for Kamala Harris because if he had gave her more enough time, she would be able to like showcase and build her connection and be able to like get even like have people have more time to push her on certain things, not coming at the 11th hour. So uh, it's kind of wild. It's a little different. It's a lot of nuances in this type of election. It's a lot, it's. But yeah, I feel like it's world changing, impacting as it was in 2016. And 2016, as we both know, only made the world a worse place. It only made it a worse place. It did not make it any better. Um, at most, I mean, it also took us years to develop such a strong leftist space, even like online. Um,
Yeah.
and until like 2020, I say 2021 was officially when I would say it was like stamped in and just like this is like all this stuff that's like it's new. Like there was a lot of like mostly like I would say it went from like anti-Shajabi's getting the bag, then it basically became like apolitical people, and now people are just being open to like that. Your average person is more leftist nowadays, where now this is like a thing now, so it's just kind of changed. I don't know. It's a lot. So it's but I'm nervous like how that would impact. Like will we just get a like I said, like I totally anticipated an entire other wave of anti SJW videos. I mean, they're trying to like this whole video is called Gamergate 2.0. Like they're trying to like bring it back. They're already trying, so because I'm making a video on the topic right now already. So
Yeah.
like I'm researching it as we speak. I've been researching it since summer break. So it's just kind of like, yeah. So I already see like they're just waiting to get even more emboldened and create a bigger audience. And again, remember, a lot of minors were impacted during that, including me, by that content. That made me have to like climb out of that and like learn, like undo self-hate, undo like my lack of knowledge of political views because I was a high schooler. I had no political compass at the time. I was just I had no idea about politics at the time. When you're so young, someone that talks really like, they sound so certain, they talk very confidently. When you're a minor, you just like, oh, they're smart, they know what they're talking about. And it kind of, it's that simple. So I can just imagine that's a whole generation of kids that could potentially fall victim of that genre of content again. And when you have Trump in office emboldening that, and again, it's not even just that, but like I mean, like Trump, and it's like it's not just America, but it'd be like again, people throughout like Europe would start making the same kind of content they were making during Trump's first term. So that would embolden folks. They would just make like, oh, because it would show the world that, oh, this is socially acceptable. If someone like America can elect someone like that, this behavior is okay. I can, that's what Trump's election did. It emboldened a lot of people who at first initially were too afraid to show their bigoted beliefs, and now they're letting it all hang out. And it's only, and not only that, not only they're letting it hang out, they're like weaponizing it now, and it's just like, and it's impacting us legislatively. Like again, Roe v. Wade gone, affirmative action, like they're just looking for the next thing. They got rid of affirmative action. You know what they moved towards? DEI,
Yeah.
diversity, equity, inclusion. My whole video is about it's called the rise of the anti DEI movement. And so it's literally like, it's wild to kind of like notice, because they're moving the goalposts. Like y'all got affirmative action to get removed. Aren't you happy? They're not happy. They're not done yet. They just got started. And that's what scares me, is like they do one thing and they move on to another. They got rid of Roe v. Wade and now they're trying to get rid of IVF.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. Like literally, there's like it's not. They got rid of from that. They got rid of Roe v. Wade. Women that need an abortion to like save their lives can't get those no more. They moved it to that in some states, and so it's wild. It's their ones where like they're trying to pass one, I think in Texas, where they would get criminalized. So they got an abortion out of state. They took a trip. So like, which is, it sounds so wild. Like, so you like that's not freedom. You can't leave your own state, go get
It's
a medical
terrifying, isn't it?
seizure and come back, and they're gonna be handcuffs waiting for you when you come home. Like that's
It's so frightening. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head there, right? Like, there's no end to like every time you get these right wing types and they say, oh, well, we just want to change a few things and make it a bit more right wing. No, the end goal is their fascist white supremacist dystopia, right? Where all the things you describe, the first Roe v. Wade raid, then IVF, then you look at divorce laws being targeted in some states. You look at like I saw in one state they've changed the dress codes in their like political buildings so that you can't show a certain amount of skin, which is awful, right? Because essentially what they're saying is only men are permitted really to wear the clothes they are able to. There's so many attacks on different marginalized groups that are happening now and in store if they get political office, which makes it such a loaded election, right? It makes it such a dangerous time to exist in, like terrifying.
Yeah, Texas is like, I think they did pass the law or they're trying to pass the law where or it's a thing that just got passed where if someone complains of a trans woman being in the women's restroom, one, they made it illegal, but two, now they're making it to where they would be awarded $10,000. Basically, like the fine would be $10,000, and
Yeah, I
basically,
saw that.
yeah. So I just found that
And I
out.
think that also, like, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I said I think I found that out either this morning or yesterday. I don't remember what day, but I recently found that out, and I was like, "What?" Yeah, it's yeah. Sorry, continue. Say what you're gonna
No,
say.
I was just gonna. I think that speaks to the online nature that's influenced this as well, because it's like it's not a like you can have 10 grand if you spot a trans person in their bathroom. Like that isn't something that a logical mind produces, right? Like, it's not like a law that's come through the minds of serious people. It's like some flash grab, off the cuff statement someone makes in like a YouTube video, which is exactly where many of these people were radicalized and were pushed for the right. I think like there's such a as more and more people who've spent time in online spaces like enter politics, there's this very obnoxious, nasty, just vitriolic element to politics, which obviously has been there in the American system for a very long time and in systems across the world. But it's never been more direct and present and just in your face as it is in this election cycle and in the last sort of 10 years in general. Like Trump, I think, has normalized a lot of stuff that would never previously have been said out loud and in your face. Like the clip of the Mehdi Hassan's on CNN and someone makes a racist comment about him. That would never be as overt as it has been in the past. And like obviously when you say things like that, people the history of America is slavery and segregation and various groups being stripped of their rights and subject to atrocity and genocide and stuff, right? But the progress that was made between then and now, I feel, is under threat and is being targeted. And that's in my country as well, right? Like you look at the attacks on LGBTQ people, the fact that Keir Starmer is currently trotting around saying we don't need to pay reparations and the British Empire's in the past and colonialism's over and all the sort of typical excuses you'd hear from like conservatives and quite like apologists for the past, basically just coming out of the mouth of someone who's supposedly leader of a left-leaning party, right? Labour are meant to be a party that opposes the Conservatives, and yet here they are basically engaging in the same thing. And so the fact that all this right-wing stuff, all this conservative reactionary stuff is just at the front of a lot of mainstream politics is a sign that we're in very contentious times, I feel.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think I don't know what else to add to that, and that because it's just like it's just it's the same like basically like we're kind of just stuck until we deal with this until like we're in a way we're in a position where like we're like idle until this election is over and then we find out what happens next. You get what I mean? Like we have everything you said, and like it's again like my fear is that we're probably like again like I said so much ways on this election that like yeah like all we have is like what we're already battling and what we're fearing what's coming next. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of like we're dealing with everything from the last election impacts of like one Trump term. So like, and so we're juggling that at the same time with also while they're making new threats, mind you, there's ongoing things, there's ongoing bills being read, and there's things we don't even know they haven't introduced just yet, but they will introduce that we're juggling. And then we have like this unknown, like exactly like, oh, like is it gonna get even worse? Do I have to like stockpile hormones? Are people going to have to figure out, are they going to be able to move away, have to move away from their homes? I mean, like when you ban HRT, like there's one state where like they banned it, like they made it where you can't get on HRT until you're 25. They're waiting, so they said because your brain is fully developed, but yeah, they don't say that for people drinking alcohol. So which is kind of interesting how they like it's wild. It's like you're infringing on adults, what they can do with their bodies. So imagine like if you have bottom surgery as a trans girl, um, without HRT, without estrogen, the elasticity that keeps them operating would seal up and they would bleed to death. So like people would literally like die if HRT is taken away. So they're trying to like Trump's trying to ban that. He's trying to federally like he's trying to take away like the FDA approved like for HRT. Like he's trying to make it like difficult, more difficult than it already is in some spaces, and that's just going to be an upward fight, and it's going to make people who are also some of the most impoverished in America, forced to have to move with our like forced in situations like basically like what's the term? They would basically like, and we've been using this term in America, but like kind of like refugees in the sense like for like certain laws, like with like from state to state, you're like getting a like people are gonna have to evacuate Florida once they if they were to like go as far as to ban it, and it would be like, oh, like we have no choice but to leave. There's a lot of trans families that had to leave Texas when their laws were getting initiated. I mean, drag is banned in Texas. You know, you
Yeah.
can't even do drag no more. Like, and that was because of Shoe on Head. Shoe on Head pushing a fake misinformation got that way, and a bill. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to. LOL. I was just trolling, or not. I was." Look, I'm frustrated. I don't need a round two. I don't need a round two of that. I'm already trying to hold the first round of anti-estrogens accountable. They helped elect Trump. So like I don't it's a lot. And it's a lot. It's kind of like again, like I said, so I'm researching a lot of this. Like I'm looking up like what are we already dealing with on our palette right now? It's like, hey y'all, what's what Black women in America say? Hey y'all, we can't do no more than what we got right now. We can't deal with more than we got right now. Please don't make our job harder. Don't get mad because if I'm drowning, I can't go swim and save you too. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to help. I like you can't admonish me for that if that's the outcome too. So
Yeah.
let's try our best to prevent us from all drowning together. Let's not let's try to like make it to where we're able to do stuff and that we're not over occupied. I think that's what like black women and that's what trans a lot of trans people especially and also disabled people are saying that like hey like a lot of us rely on some things like we rely on the government operating. A lot of people rely on the government actually functioning and not like Republicans is playing around this like it's given George, what's it called? George Bush, where he just had a Game Boy Advance in his suitcase. Or what people say he had crayons in a coloring book. Yeah, nothing in that suitcase. But like that's like we feel like they're just goofing off, and like when it's Republicans, they're not getting stuff done. They're just like, oh, they're just playing. They're running around with scissors. Oh, we could cut this. We could cut this budget. We cut that. Just running playing with scissors, not like really thinking deeply like how we're gonna get impacted. So like
Yeah.
I'm just being rational. I honestly, it's making me feel like an auntie, and I'm Gen Z. Like I'm just trying to be rational, y'all. I'm just trying to be real. I can't do more than I have, and don't be mad at me. That's what I'm being real. I can't do more than I can. My plate is full already. Don't give me more work. I don't want extra
Exactly
credit.
right. Like
I don't want extra credit. That's my metaphor. But continue.
but no, like it's exactly what you say, right? Like there's all these. Not only do they actively like just trash over people, trample over people's rights, and have all these pseudoscientific beliefs that mix in with their bigotry, which make things just so dangerous. But we almost have to pick up the pieces from what is left behind by their like chaos and carnage. Like, because
Yeah.
even if Harris wins, like there's still going to be red states, right? There's still going to be people who live in places Republicans control. Even in Democrat states, right? There's still going to be people who are Republican in those states trying to like. I always think of like the schools, right? There's so many school boards which have been taken over by Republican, like right-wing conservatives, and who've basically said, right, you're going to stop teaching any sex ed. You're going to stop catering to anything outside of like cis heterosexual white people. So no Black history, no LGBTQ history. Get rid of disability rights. Like, and that takes time to unwork, right? Because the time it takes to get rid of that stuff is like time out of your life, time out of your emotions. Like, it's just time consuming stuff. So like we almost have to take on so much of everyone else's, like people who are, I hate to use the term woke now because of like it's got such a negative connotation unfairly, but like people who are aware and can see what's going on with this party, who are having to do lots of the mental and emotional work to like push through and sort things out, are going to be feeling like you said, like an auntie, right? Like just people who looking out for everyone else, trying to keep things going. Actually, there's a lot of work happening. There's a lot of stuff that it takes to push on in society when all that's just like weighing down, which I think is part of the deliberate nature of this fascism, right? And like when creators like Shu and whoever else like put out the misinformation and like the like really far right ones who just spend all their time tweeting out just nonsense, provably false nonsense as well, about various marginalized groups. Like this person, if you're going to take time out of your day to say, actually, this is false for these reasons, that's time you spent having to engage with intentionally hateful stuff. Like, even just like when you read, like, because I do research for my degree, right, where I'm looking at various right-wing arguments and various like ideas that conservatives have taken to politics, and a lot of it is just based on like outright hatred towards marginalized people. Like, oh, there's no need for any Black history because blacks have got it fine, and like. And you just know that it's just a wrong statement going in. You have to sit and read all this awful, awful stuff about Black people that has been intentionally made to be provocative and nasty and spiteful. And it's just taken as part of the course. It's like, okay, well, because in society we have to take this stuff seriously because they're an actual political party, we've got to sit and listen to all this stuff and just not feel any emotions or not let that show in our emotional state.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're describing is the psychic damage we've all been dealt. We all been taking psychic damage. That's what you're describing. You reading that you're taking psychic damage to the stuff you have. Like that's what happens when I research my videos. There's so much psychic damage I get from having to research. Just go like making sure I'm accurate, having citations, conveying their argument accurately, actually showcasing their like having to read their. Yeah, admits like so you don't misrepresent them, like truly understanding their argument, like you like, and it's like, ooh, no, this is so that's your justification for this. This is what you're like, that's your takeaway. That's the hill you want to die on. Like it's a lot, and again, like it goes back to like basically like even like with Kamala Harris, if she does win, like we're gonna basically be dealing with the same stuff we're dealing already right now, and that's what I think. Like my point, and not just mine, but a lot of people's points. Like it's kind of like this is the amount of pollution we know how to manage. We're barely managing it, but this is the amount of pollution we can deal with right now. You don't add more. We don't need another several scoops of this. So it's just like we like again like we're doing enough psychic damage, and also when like you do with like things already like you said, like things are being organized on the ground right now. Stuff has been done, stuff are in the process of doing. Like there's things like even with my own community where like we have a org called my area that's called where I live. Let's say like space that, and then black. It goes black space. Whatever the space we live. So it's just like org just named after that, and we just like do stuff in our predominantly like it's a PWI. It's just a predominantly white environment. It's like totally as it's probably it is the whitest place I lived in my life, actually. Yes, it's the whitest place. So it's just like we go out of our way to like host events and do things for the community that is here. I teach art classes to the youth. I mean, it's interesting when I ask my students like about like I asked them like, do you know who's running for president? I know I shouldn't be, but I did, and they're like, oh, like they're all like singing about Kamala. They're like, I don't want one. I remember one little girl said, I just don't want Trump to win. And then they all started talking about how they felt about Trump. All these little kids that are like 7, 8, 9 years old, going up to 12, all being able to talk about how they don't like Trump and what like the kids that annoyed them, or like they were telling me about like how certain kids were acting when Trump was in office. I was like, wow, these little kids, they're really smart. They're not only just really smart, but like they have opinions and they know the difference with bad. And they understand like how they described it like it's weird. Like to them, like it's weird. Like basically the president, like, that's weird for the president to say that. They're supposed to like they're being taught how they're supposed to be in school and how they're all like respectable people in grade school. And then they go look at that and it's like, it's a contradiction. So like even the kids to see they're like, this is ghetto. That's basically what they were basically. This is ghetto. Like when he was in office, it was just so funny. But it's kind of when I remember when I saw that was the most like I can't let these babies go through that. I can't let them go through that. I just can't. I can't have them be shown nastiness in the world and have to just like grow past it, having to be the bigger person. Stuff like when we were little kids, we were shielded from. It never got to the level that it is now. So there's a lot of stuff like we don't know nothing else other than like what's being shown to us. Like, but it's different. Like now,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's you
It's
know what I
that
mean? Yeah.
it's like the proliferation of like internet culture into because
Hmm.
like when we I'm also Gen Z,
Yeah.
so Gen Z I would say because my Britishness, but we you know grew up. Well, obviously the internet's there, but it wasn't. You didn't like see people. You didn't see politicians tweeting. You didn't see
Hmm.
um like them going on a YouTube channel and doing like a podcast with YouTubers. You wouldn't see like them taking time to adopt like internet jargon and discourse into their actual like political rallies and political statements. Whereas now, like you almost need to have that to be able to get your message out and engage with a populace that uses phones and doesn't really watch. Like obviously people watching TV and stuff, but certainly like you get home from work or get home from school or whatever or university. Like what do you go and watch? You go on your phone and you check what's on social media and you see like what memes your friends have sent you and all of that sort of stuff, right? And so because of that, there's an overlap of where the far right have as your video is probably going to cover, as lots of people have researched, the far right entry into these spaces has made it almost impossible to spend a long time thinking about politics or any sort of socially
Yeah.
popular element without interacting with some really ugly stuff. And some people, like if you're lucky, because I was lucky, right? Like my family is quite left leaning already. So when I saw like I remember being at school and seeing like anti-feminist videos for the first time and thinking like this is so embarrassing, and these are grown men basically sat at home just yelling at the idea that actually society might have some inbuilt biases that mean there's still some sexism. It was literally like I remember at the time, like when you'd see these like hour-long response videos to like a 5-minute pop feminism video where it's just like, oh, catcalling's not good because it can make some spaces feel unsafe, and you get like an hour of someone going, well, actually, here's where there's a biological reason it has to happen, and like you're thinking like, what is going on? But people who've not got that same access to like media literacy and maybe don't have the same support networks or even just have a few inbuilt biases themselves and just haven't worked on them yet, they hear this and think, feminism is really bad, and that's how they're like suckered in to like and to even worse beliefs and the whole anti-SJW like incessant rage mode that lets them get sucked into conspiracies and anger. And that's how you get people now who see Trump for the monster that he is, see the Republican Party as a far right party, but don't care and just laugh along as the Nazis go on stage and make horrible comments about every marginalized person under the sun.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's just a lot of yeah, I think that's the scary part. Like this election's like once again based on the centrists, the people in the middle, how they feel, who feel indifferent to a lot of things. And that's how it's always been. Every election, like every like president has always like in the end relied on them. And that's why like, Kamala Harris is weak on trans rights. She said like, I'll go by the legal, what's legal or something along the lines of that. Like what was like in her interview when she
Yeah,
talked
like a
about
very
that.
like middle of the road answer, right? Like
Yeah, middle of the road
playing it
answer.
safe.
Yeah, so that's the stage she's in now, that she has to rely on these people who have the same view that Kamala Harris just said there. And it's just like playing it safe. Like they're or where it's like they'll be the same people who say like they're an ally, but like their allyship is that they don't hate them. They're just like, oh, you're on your own though. That's kind of how people say they're allies to black people. But like they've never once helped a single black person in their life. They've never like done nothing. They just like, oh well, like my support is my statement of your support, and that's my support.
Yeah,
Meaning
it's a very like I don't know, they tweeted out hashtag end racism once and then that's that. Like there's no like it's very much like they treat it as in the same way they oppose murder. I'm not a murderer, so therefore I'll gladly clap for the police or something like that. Like there's no
no, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's the crowd. Like they're forced to cater to the most annoying crowd, the most fence sitters. That's something. They're the biggest fence sitters. Are the centrists? Are the middle ground people? They're the biggest fence sitters. It's like you're looking for the what tide where they like whether the tide goes before you feel safe enough to like a lot of politically spineless people, as I would say. A lot of politically
Yeah,
spineless people. I have uh I have no words to hold back for people that like can't stand on nothing. Like you don't stand for nothing, then like
blow for
are
anything,
you
right?
yeah, like are you an NPC? Can you like be like do you stand for anything
Yeah.
individually? Like
I think that the trouble is though, because they have so much political capital, because they've got so many, you know, news networks, media outlets, high
mm,
profile journalists, like they take up more space than they actually have. I feel like in the population, because like, I feel like that's one of the frustrating things. Like a lot of people are sick of like the status quo, right? A lot of people like when
mhm.
the Democrats with someone mentions actually in the comments, I think I can share it on the screen quickly. Um, you know, when they first started, like with their Harris and Waltz, and they were just saying Republicans are weird and strange and are just clearly just not acting in a way that
Mhm.
is right. Um, that was like that got a lot of people feeling actually, yeah, maybe this election's not going to be quite so bad. Maybe we're actually going to start saying, yeah, these are far right scumbags who are just like messing up everything. And then they've sort of bitten their tongue a little bit. They start, Harris was saying the other week, we're going to have a Republican in our cabinet and we're going to do all these sort of middle of the ground, like we said a second ago, follow the law and play it safe a little bit more. And I feel like part of that is because they're stuck in, like anyone in this system is stuck in a network of different, like right wing, centrist, liberally types who can only see things in a prism of law and order, being polite, being the better party, even as the other party are actively like claiming they're going to throw the election and going to enact full fascism and clearly do not care for any civil process. Like it's just so it's frustrating that the fear of being shut out almost, because I feel like they want to do things like you look at what's happened in Tim Walz's state, Minnesota. They've passed so many really quite not like socialist by any means, not like properly radical, but like things which are better than American like norms, like free school meals and social security and things like that. And they're massively popular and they work and they're things that you could do right now and improve the lives of lots of people. But because they are coded as like really radically left wing and therefore scary to the imaginary median voter, like they don't they don't run them. They don't center themselves on being vocally and politically opposing to the far right.
Yeah, that's thing example is a really good one because I remember like when I was growing up, like because like the Obama era, like even before Obama, but like it was like standard that like children got free meals and schools, and now like you're seeing Republican states where they're like they're taking that away and they're like threatening to take away kids' food. Like what? Like you don't want these children to eat, these babies to eat. Like you don't want to have money for that. And it's like the fact that people are voting to make sure kids have free lunch. That's wild. Like, or like some places where kids apparently weren't getting free lunch anymore and they were getting free lunch during COVID. But I was like, wait. They were never given free lunch? Like, so that was taken away. Like, so because that was like when Obama was the president. Obviously, Obama's like, we all know Obama's not perfect, but that's not the conversation to be had right now. But the point is, kids were eating during Obama. Even we're eating the raggedy food that Michelle Obama made us eat. She took away. She's basically told us, y'all eating too much sugar and candy and chocolate and stuff. So I'm gonna take away the donuts. And here's this frozen food in the fridge. We're gonna give you that in the freezer. That was Michelle Obama. A lot of us dislike her for that, but we have to grow up through that. But they made sure we ate. We at least they made sure we ate. So the fact that something as simple as like kids having free lunches, which also came from the Black Panther Party, that was like they're the one who introduced that in Oakland in
Yeah,
California.
yeah.
So it's just like wow, like we've come. There's a lot of regression. Like I mean, like I my fear is like once they get rid of like once they're done with like um getting things passed that to like prevent the existence of trans people, they were probably gonna try to overturn gay marriage next. That's their next
Yeah,
step. They're gonna keep moving the
yeah,
goalpost. It's kind of like the affirmative action one where they finally got rid of that and they went to what DEI. And what they're gonna do
yeah,
with DEI stuff? Well, they're gonna well that's always in existence, but then they're gonna move on to a new thing. So it's just like yeah, it's just like regression, just backwards. Like we made so much progress, and it's like it's wild. Like that's the reality, and that's all because of one term. This is because of one term. Like they were already like we had a lot of stuff we dealt with as is, but it's like that's all it takes. And it forever changed this country. Like people like they're like especially like for example, like the people that used to watch, let's say like iDubbbz that love to say the N-word. Um they don't need items to validate their bigotry anymore. They've already hardened on their views. If they've stuck that way, they don't need him no more. Like him coming out say sorry ain't gonna move him. Like they're gonna call him a cuck, and that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. Like that's like you saw in my video when I was showcasing all the videos on iDubbbz. It's all people just like attacking him that used to be in his audience.
yeah,
So it's just like that's 90% of the videos. So it's similar in that way where like a lot of people just they're riding it till the wheels fall off. And we're not trying to give them more gas. Trump going to office giving them some more gas, and I'm trying to stop that because they ride it till the wheels fall off. That's what they're doing. And
yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, the fact that like you say, you've got so many different targets, and there's no end to like what they'll stop, going after. DEI, you just know at the heart of it is a lot of like deep South, extremely conservative, extremely right wing, extremely racist politicians who have been upset since the civil rights movement that all this they basically had to give up. Yeah, essentially it goes back to that, right? That white supremacy is so ingrained in some people's mind that the idea that now black people are part of society equally is too much for them. So they use all these, you can see very clearly that they want to be saying like the N word, and they want to be basically calling us every name under the sun, but they can't. So, we're woke, we're DEI, we're every other thing. And they use that as their portmanteau to, just throw at us. Like, but we've got to stop them because any political power they get is going to be just thrown at us, like you say. Like, every moment that a right-wing parties in power is used to chew away at our rights and like our existence in society almost.
you're so spot on about that. Like they're pressed that we were treated that there was things like affirmative action, that treated us like human beings and whatnot, and like regular society things. And they've been mad about that the whole time, and now they had the second they found power, they did exactly what was in their hearts that they couldn't say publicly, and now they're saying publicly with their chests emboldened. And it's like that's what I mean. Like the world became darker once he got into office, and now like a lot of people that like I won't even say like they would just never share their opinion. Now it's like when you hear them talking, like, oh wow, I miss when you was quiet. I wish when you just kept it to Thanksgiving. You just kept your bigoted views to Thanksgiving get-togethers, and that be it. But now it's like, again, like it's wild. Like especially again, like that deep South. That I mean, I'm seeing people who were in I forgot her name, Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges is like the first black student to go to an all white school.
Yes, yeah, and she's got the
Yeah.
photo of her with the National Guard guardsmen, the FBI agency,
Yeah.
sorry, like around
There
her.
was
Yeah,
someone, I think a senator that was in that photo who's over here doing racist stuff right now. So it's like, oh, so I'm seeing her. She's a teenager in that photo yelling at Bridges as a little elementary student, and now she is a senator. Some old lady in the South. I don't remember. She said some. She said some. I forgot what it was. It was. I think she made a joke about a lynching party, something like that. I don't know, something like that. I think they're in like Tennessee or Mississippi. I'm trying to remember what it
Yeah.
was. But yeah, like that's the people who are in power, people who were um like those people are having a voice that like they've been pressed since Ruby Bridges was walking into that school, and now they're
Yeah,
given the
yeah.
time of day because a lot of these people, because in America, a lot of our politicians are like so old, so there's like a lot of that's what we were saying, like they have dated views. In America, like they don't represent us, like especially the Republicans. They like you got people like Mitch McConnell holding on like a demon holding onto like the podium, this whole like holding onto his life. Like,
But I think as well, it's so important to consider as well that that is not that long ago, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, she's still alive. She's still. It's not as though like we always see photos of that in black and white, and
yeah,
that gives us the impression that this was like some like you often hear like racists and like the well-meaning sort of moderates and stuff like, oh, slavery and civil rights was so long ago, and now we've got a perfect society. Well, actually, it was in living memory for some people. It was literally their lives that were spent battling and dealing with this outright abuse and racism. And the same people who were there then are trying to, do the same thing back. They want to try and return us to their Jim Crow segregated misery lives. Like it's
yeah.
it's shocking.
I think it's also the fact that like some counties or states are banning books about reading about Ruby Bridges because they have their little like you know how Ron DeSantis has like his anti woke laws. If you want funding from public schools, you can't read these list of books that have I forgot what it's called. It's so long ago now to me, which is only like a year ago, 2 years ago. But like there was literally like I remember they were supposed to watch a movie about Ruby Bridges, and one parent complained about it being woke or like brainwashing the kids, or I don't know what they call it. There's a term, they have a term for it, they call it, and that they group it all in, like when they're reductive for it, and yeah, they ban it. There's the books they're trying to ban books about Anne Frank in public schools and whatnot. Like it's like the fact that they're trying to
It's
like some
terrifying.
schools is preventing children to learn about Ruby Bridges is what like most of us all did in public school. It's like wow, like that's what I mean, like regression. Like these are people like they have the mic and now they're trying to undo history. They're trying to rewrite history. They're trying to say slaves was they was happy that they were workers, like changing the words around and like it's no, they're
It's
trying to make them hate
disgusting.
themselves. We're not teaching white kids to hate themselves. We're teaching them history. Oh my god, y'all like it's wild and it's
It's so disgusting. Like I think that's such a sort of like a nice reminder to like we're on the left. There's no like all the stuff they say is projection and blatant lies because they know that if they actually just paused and listened to what was said in like left-wing circles and in the classes that they claim are like indoctrinating people, if they actually paused and listened to it, they'd find that actually it's not that profound a statement. Yes, there's a history of racism and sexism and misogyny and just disgraceful attitudes in many countries in the world because we've had a long history as a species, as humanity has had to overcome a lot of things and battle through even more. And part of that would also involve the deconstruction of the capitalist system, right? Like the fact that making money and the blind pursuit of profit led to chattel slavery, the creation of race as a construct to separate out people and justify slavery, the fact that women were seen as the weaker sex can be directly traced to making domestic labor some essential quality of women and not like something you're getting for free because you've subjugated an entire gender of people. Like LGBTQ people existing questions the organization of society that was put about by cis heteronormative fundamentalist religious groups, right? Like if you're a church that promotes man, woman, and family, then all of a sudden someone's saying, well, actually, my existence isn't quite like that, questions that. And so when we break down these structures of power, what we're doing is breaking down an unfair societal structure, which is kind of about through people insisting they be placed on top and be left to their own devices. And so when we break that down, that naturally draws the ire of the right-wing types and those with lots of resource and the wealthiest, the far right and stuff, because their version of society requires the upholding of all these structures and requires a docile, subservient population, be it women, black people, whoever. And so it's so important for us to push and question that model and to try and fight and power on through.
Yeah, I mean, like, also you have to remember, like, Republican states have the lowest education rates in all of America. They're all at the bottom of the list. They're like, which is so they that's what I'm like, oh, it's the loudest ones that know the least. And like we're forced to bend the knee to people who are just stupid. Like just not to be mean, but like yeah, like it's like, you know, like there's like a whole even like thing like I remember like during 2020 when when Joe Biden got into office, there was a whole like Joe Biden made a bill included in a bill that I think they came with the stimulus or like stuff to like give aid to like folks. The infrastructure packet, it was the infrastructure packet during 2020 and during COVID. They had one thing for black farmers because of us being disenfranchised in America, and you know, like the systemic racism that like minimized black farmers' existence and like put them in situations where they wouldn't work with them and whatnot, and you know, made them forced to sell their land, like to put them in situations they just, you know, like systematic oppression. And so they put him basically gave them in a form of reparations that was in a way to like, here, we're gonna let you work with us, here's money. And because some white farmers who already getting money were, how dare they get money, that is still in court. I think they took it to court, they shut that down, they got that frozen, they got the funds frozen. And I think at the end they never got it because they fought it, they took it to court. And look at who's in court now, look at who's in the Supreme Court. Of course it got shut down, of course. And it's like, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
sucks.
those southern states, I mean, I feel it's always like when I hear about their education and like all the resources and stuff, like you feel sorry for the actual like teachers and educational like professionals who are battling all their might to try and get things done for their kids and trying to make their places livable, right? Because like a lot of people live in the South. Like I feel like sometimes you hear some Democrats talk and like some liberal types talk about it, like it's all just like 5 cabins with like a group of racists around a bonfire or something. Actually, there's some really populated places down there with a lot of people who are stuck in gerrymandered racist states that, you know, racist, sexist, anti-LGBTQ, anti-disability, anti-everything basically, right? Their vision of society that the Republican Party in those places want is atrocious because they have successfully like defunded schools and cut lots of social security and made it unlivable for trans people and want to make it unlivable for any other LGBTQ people. And like when, as Raptor says in the chat here, you know, when the discussions happen and when things are actually put into place that might, you know, challenge that, they oppose it fiercely. Hence the banning of books. Hence the crackdown on like protests and the ability to actually like engage in the sort of stuff we're doing now, but like on a bigger scale. Because if you look in lots of states, they've actually made it really hard for professionals to put things forward in like academic spaces to actually get the things that would help their communities, like Black history being banned in lots of these places, no space for LGBTQ people to teach and discuss things, no space for protests. Like it's shocking.
Yeah, my God. The fact is, we still haven't even touched half of the stuff. We were just thinking of what we could come up with right now, what we can think, like what we know, like what's coming to mind. It's just like, again, like even going to like the aspect of back to the red states and like their powers of what they can do. Like I used to be able to like in any university have no problem playing in women's sports, and now if I want to play softball or volleyball, they're having they're suing that now. They're trying to they're basically dropping right now. There's a trans girl who no one knew was trans. She likely transitioned very young, like me. I came out in 8th grade. They probably came out around the same time as me. And medically transitioned since then, so she's virtually no one would be able to distinguish her from a cis girl. And so basically, she's been on the team for years, and no one knew until she just, I guess, like someone, I guess she accidentally shared it or like casually shared it, opened up to one of her teammates, and that girl went and like snitched, and like now is in a whole court case, and that used to be her really good friend, and now it's like she's like working it like all super like turfy, and like, and every team that goes against them, they're dropping out and joining the lawsuit. So each game that comes up, teams are dropping out, specifically from red states, and just not going against them. Like they refused. And it's like that's like taking away like what they would rather sit here and do a lawsuit than allow them girls to play. To allow
Yeah.
them girls, like that's how bad, like this, like that's just the beginning. They're gonna go to a news, like they're trying to ban trans women from playing chess. Nothing has nothing to do with our powers and chess, but like that's, I mean, these powers,
It's
these magical powers we have.
of course, like it would be hilariously like just or like it would be such I'd be like in a fair society like we'd be just laughing, right? Because it's just like so absurd.
Mhm.
But the fact that this is like, as you say, taken so seriously and just like they treat it as though there's any like scientific basis for trans women are unfairly able to do chess. But even like with sport, like they know that the way they describe it as though like suddenly like the Hulk drops down and just like scores 100 touchdowns and like flicks people away with their finger, when in actuality like it's sport, so there's no discernible. You're playing like the idea that conservatives who would rather women stayed at home and did dishes and like cooked meals and gave birth to kids and nothing else somehow care about the fairness of women's sport is absurd,
Yeah,
right?
and just like the
And
comments
I
said, like
find
they
it
never cared
so,
about women's sports. They
yeah,
never cared about women's sports.
and it's so like ridiculous as well, right? Because it's sport. Like if you're going to talk about unfairness, then what is any sport, right? Like if I go and race Usain Bolt, like who's 6'6" and can run it in 9.58, like and then I turn around and be like, oh well, you've had an unfair advantage because you're 6 inches taller than me, and you're also you're genetically disposed to breathe like for longer. And it's like, well, no, it's a sport. Like of course there's going to be differences. Like it's not. It's tough, right? If someone's bigger and stronger than you, that's tough. And ultimately, if one athlete, like, it's not even as though, like, because I think because of our gender essentialism that's baked into a lot of society, like, there's a lot of assumptions that you just have about like men and women anyway, which makes when you hear trans women in sport, like people just go down that gender essentialist path. But in actuality, that initial premise of like the binary being fixed and men are this and women are that isn't true to begin with, because the people who are professionally playing sports aren't like, it's like that meme, right? Where like you have the two wolves and the male wolf's got like a huge jaw and a massive nose, and the female wolf is like really dainty and has like pretty eyes and stuff. Like that is an obvious meme, but that affects how a lot of people actually think. Like that logic is like present when people discuss sports and stuff. In actuality, if you're running around playing sport and stuff, like and like there's no.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
just, it's an entirely silly debate. I find it's just
I mean, it's the fact
ridiculous.
that cis women are impacted by this. Like we
Yeah,
saw in the
yeah,
Olympics, like the middle. I don't know what country she's from, but the boxer, they accused her of being trans.
yeah.
Was it trans?
Imane Khalif from Algeria, I want to say.
Yeah, there was that, but that's a lighter case. There's black women who were removed from sports because they had too high testosterone levels, despite being cis, despite being born female. They were being disqualified, and I think it was I think it was like, I don't know, it was cross country or track, but they were like not
Yeah,
allowed.
it's Castor Semenya, I want to say, is the person. Like,
Mhm.
oh, as if
Yeah,
there's more than one, right? But
yeah,
that goes back to the misogynoir, right? Like the
yeah.
intersection of sexism and racism. You're a black woman, therefore you're not a real woman. You're too strong, too masculine, not granted the same vision of femininity that they apply to other women. And as you say, that then leads into the next argument of, oh well, women can't play sports because they're weak and dainty and need to be protected and stuff. It's entirely like BS. And yet here it is going to courtrooms and at the center of political discussion in 2024. It's disgusting.
Also, it's the wild thing. It's like some of their solutions, like, oh, we'll just join a trans league. Yet those same people won't put together one, even in that same breath. So like they're basically saying you belong nowhere. You don't
Yeah.
belong. That's essentially they don't
Well,
want us
that's
to
the point,
be.
right? It's
Yeah,
like
that's the
that's the point.
point.
They just don't want anyone present. Or like
Yeah.
there other solutions of like what was one of them? We'll have a genital inspector, which like can you imagine like how would one even go about creating that job? Like it's just a safeguarding. You can tell that anyone who suggests that has no idea of like the safeguarding you need in schools and any educational facility, right? But then
Yeah.
that brings you on to the next like scary, like the conservative vision of education where like kids are basically going to the job factory to learn how to be a docile worker, and they want to get rid of counselling. They want parental rights, i.e., like
I mean,
let conservatives believe what they want in school and stuff, and let them pull their kid out of school if they don't like what's being taught.
yeah,
Like,
but Ruby Bridges is being talked about. Oh, they're like, my kids can't be exposed to that woke nonsense. You're corrupting my children. I mean, also these are the people were the same people were calling Michelle Obama and Serena Williams men when
yeah,
it was just a conspiracy theorist. These were people that were conspiracy theorists. I miss those days when it was just a conspiracy theory. At least they had no power, but they turned something that was just a conspiracy theory and they emboldened people, and it just got worse and worse. And now it's like, look at I'm impacted now because before they weren't none of this coming out back then when they would have these conspiracy theories about Serena Williams and Michelle Obama. Now it's like direct impacts. There's like they're taking legal action. They're doing things they didn't do before, and it
yeah. Well,
amazes
because
me.
Trump, I think that to wrap us back to
Yeah.
the election, that Trump, when
Mhm.
he was last in office, appointed so many judges who shared all the like absurd far right views and like rabid culture war stuff that he and his current like administration, or not administration,
Yeah.
current like posse do. So now there's just so many people in place writing awful laws, passing it through really quickly, having to be like, but you obviously get like some states where there's still some people fighting it and stuff that's like made it harder to pass stuff. But then there's loads where a lot of stuff has passed, like Texas is awful, Florida's awful, all like Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee. But like any state with any like Republican presence and right wing presence is like at risk because there's just so many like the Republicans of 10 years ago, who obviously were still bad in lots of ways, but like weren't open, they like fiscally conservative or whatever, and obviously still rubbish, but like weren't quite as openly fascist as some of these ones. Like they're basically out of the party now, right? Because the whole
Mhm.
party now is just Trump agenda, far right, Project 2025. That's like the whole movement now. And if you want to be in that party, then that's what you have to get on board with. There's no like moderation or moderate like stance within that. So any place that has these people basically is at risk of being like turned into, oh, trans women can't do this, so we're not going to teach about black people anymore. We're going to
Yeah.
bin off workers' protections, like in Florida where they've got rid of like heat protection laws. So if it's a hot day, tough, out you go into the outdoors. No water break for you. Awful.
Look, the Republican Party is working overtime. They've been working overtime. They're working harder than the Democrats. Sadly, I'm noticing they're working. They're working in there. At least like when it's come to taking away rights, taking away people's rights, taking away opportunities. Um, Yeah, they weren't these again. These are not the old school Republicans. Like I miss them. I miss when they were just arguing about the spending bill and this and that. When they were just they had their little their conservative values. When it was just that. But now we're dealing with a new age right wing. I mean it's
Yeah.
far right. They're far right. That's like I don't even think that was a term back then. That's like from yeah, wasn't that from like the anti-SJW era? Like that became a popular term, the far right or like alt right. Those all
Yeah,
got
alt right
popularized.
was like because when Trump
Yeah.
like first came to power, like or first became like when obviously he's been around for a long time, like when he was in the Republican
Mhm.
primaries and like outpolling like Chris Christie and Ted Cruz and stuff, people were like, oh well, this guy is worse than these other guys and just saying really bad things. So we can't just call him right. We've got to think of something else. But because far right was like the label you'd use to describe like a neo-Nazi chapter or like the
Mhm.
KKK, like and at that point, Trump was still fresh and different enough to sort of seem different to that. So a lot of people said alt-right. Whereas now, like, because they've been out in the open for so long and sucked so much of the right towards them, like now they have gone further right, and so I suppose far right does fit more naturally. And as they now
Yeah.
basically say the same things you'd find on those, like, because I remember like years and years ago when I was at school, we had to do like a profile on Adolf Hitler, and like we had to do like a fact
Mhm.
file about like Nazis and stuff. And I remember our teacher was like, "Well, don't go. You know, if you go online and type in these names, you might find some of these sites. These are Nazi sites. Don't touch these sites because they're like, basically bad places." And so I remember, because I was I was obviously never, like, I was never right wing at any point, but like I thought, okay, well, let's see what they look like. And so you go on to like Stormfront or Breitbart, and it's got all the typical, like, oh, black people invading white spaces, oh, look at this fake statistic, all of that. And now all the stuff that you found on those sites is now just out in the open, like replacement theory, white genocide, birth rates,
Yeah.
mixed race children, all of that stuff, which is just obvious Nazi stuff back in the day, is
Maya
now just like,
Yiannopoulos, everything Maya
yeah,
Yiannopoulos is saying
yeah,
now, they're all like, I think that's like they made what alt-right was just regular right now. That's just
yeah,
your, because they moved so far, they moved so right now that is just your standard right wing talking points now is alt-right. What was all considered alt-right in 2016.
yeah.
So yeah, I think
And a
that's
lot of
wow.
because like a lot of people, like, obviously you've got like like a Steve Bannon type, right? Like an active,
Mhm.
a guy who literally goes to prison because he's just an openly like white supremacist
Yeah.
political entity, right? But then you've got a lot of conservatives who would still consider themselves as they, if you ask them, don't believe they've changed since like 2016 or whatever, but because they've consumed so much far right media and so much stuff influenced by Nazis and stuff, they can't see they've been dragged further right. And so you see a lot of them say,
Like Joe
"Oh,
Rogan.
yeah, exactly," and they'll be like, "Oh, well, the left's gone so radical, and they've gone so left wing, and the Democrats are now basically a socialist party," and like, it's just an absurd statement. But because
Yeah.
they not only can't see their own like changing worldview, and they lack any perspective or awareness, in part because they consume like Fox News and rubbish media, they have been indoctrinated and can't see it. And like, even saying that, like, that's such, everyone uses that term. Everyone says, "Oh, you're in a cult, you've been indoctrinated." But when you actually look at what has happened to a lot of these spaces, like, loads of conservatives have, like, they've just spent, like Elon Musk, they just spent all their time on Twitter. They followed like accounts that just tweet, like, I don't know, like what would it be, like like a video of like a shoplifting, and it says like, "Oh, black people are doing this to your cities," and they just watch that all the time, and that leads them to just believe really racist stuff and everything else.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. I want to say what are our final statements? I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
say my brain is at its limit. Because we're
I
like,
was
bro,
gonna
this
say
is
as
so
well, before it
much.
starts getting dry.
Yeah, my throat's getting dry. I need some water. But I want to say this was wow, we really got into the nitty-gritty on a lot of this stuff. Like a lot. We really were jogging our memory of like, okay, because we both were around. We're both were around and we've seen a lot. And
Yeah.
yeah, so this is definitely this is a very fruitful conversation and I appreciate that and I look forward to like this coming up. But were there any like final things you want to ask me or you want to like get my
Um,
opinion on?
I mean, I think we largely covered quite, like you said, it's quite a little like snaking around all the topics and stuff. I
Mhm.
suppose the last one would just be like, what's something that you'd recommend people do to take care of themselves in what's going to be quite a tumultuous period? Like, what is something that, obviously, if you're one person, you're not going to be able to change the entire political landscape.
Mhm.
But what can you do just to make sure you're going to be all right just over a potentially busy few days, busy few weeks even?
I would say have, and then this is something coming from Angela Davis. Have I think it's called radical self-healing. Where you can't be on 100% all the time. You're gonna have to have rest. so you can get back in there. And whenever you know you need that, or you feel your body is telling you that you need a moment, so you can get back out there and do that work. And again, yeah, that's directly from Angela Davis. That's one of the
Great
things
author.
I enjoyed knowing that like there's sometimes like you gotta like let people take turns. Let's like take shifts. So, like you're healing, someone else who was like healing, they're able to go out there and put in that energy. So like, um, yeah. So that's one thing I would suggest personally. But like in the midst of this, because we still have to function. We still need to be like here, present, and also like we only can take so much psychic damage at once. You
Yeah.
gotta like recharge and go back out there. So you
Yeah.
gotta
No, exactly.
decompress, and I think more people need to hear that. So
Yeah.
you can think more clearly too. So you're not reacting, irrationally when you're like dealing with so much psychic damage at once. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
does harm you mentally, and you might not have like the most clearest thoughts in the moment
Yeah.
of dealing with so much at once. So definitely
And I
recharge
think,
yourself.
yeah. And I would add to that, because I would have said exactly the same thing, right? Like, you've got to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
My tip, just from personal experience, don't use social media right before bed, because it's so easy to
No.
sit or lie in bed on your phone, just scrolling through all the horrible things in the world. Like, it's not, you need your sleep. You don't want to be putting all those horrible thoughts into your mind right before you go to bed, keeping you awake and cutting into your time resting. So definitely at a certain point in the evening, just say, right, phone's go, or even if you want to stay on your phone, just get off social media, do something nice, do something that makes you in a contented state before bed, and that will give you the energy to fight an unjust world in the future. Right.
I say
It's
play
been an
video
absolute
games before
pleasure.
bed.
Soulbunni.
I said
Exactly right.
yeah, or something for you. But yeah.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. It'd be great to speak to you again at some point. It's been a fantastic discussion. And hopefully the next week's going to be nice and chill for both of us and for everyone listening. Take care all. Enjoy the rest of the evening.